so mad at the internet.
What's up, everybody? It's time for another edition of the comments section where we talk about anything 2A related, whether it's body armor, which is what we do, or firearms, ballistics, whatever. We will talk about it. We will answer your questions and your comments that we get on a weekly basis. So, Elliot, let's get to it. But I should say, before we get to it, there are a few things I think we should go over, especially the latest SCOTUS decision, which actually just came out today on June 25th.
Yeah. The Wolford decision was finally decided by the Supreme Court today. It drives a stake through the heart of Hawaii's vampire rule, and that is officially done. And I believe California and New York either had or were going to impose a rule similar to this. Essentially, in most states, if there's a place where they don't want you carrying a gun, like a bar, they'll have to put up a sign that says no firearms allowed, and post some sort of signage. And Hawaii had basically flipped that on its head and said they have to post signage saying it is allowed, otherwise it's prohibited. That, of course, flies in the face of English common law tradition, which basically says everything is legal until it's illegal. Right. And then obviously there's a 14th Amendment and the Second Amendment issues there. The Second Amendment is that it incorporates the plain text of the Second Amendment into being a problematic area here because you're infringing on the right to bear arms just at its very core. Right, you're imposing a whole bunch of unnecessary steps onto people who are trying to go about exercising their Second Amendment rights. That there's just no historical analogs. They're trying to use black codes to justify it, which are insane. The Supreme Court shut the door on using black codes as historical analogs in like modern jurisprudence. So that's just out the door. We're not using that at all anymore because it was just racially tinted from the beginning. So you won't see those being used in arguments anymore, even though the left has consistently used that. But they basically pointed out that this is just a plain text thing. We're not even having to get into the other part of the Bruin test. This is just a plain infringement on the right to bear arms. So we're done discussing it, period. It's a real short opinion, and that's done now. So the vampire rule is officially dead.
Yeah, and props to the Supreme Court. They're holding the line, not giving in. And, as I've got highlighted here, they state expressly that the property owners express authorization violated the Second and 14th Amendment. So it's just good to see that in writing, in an opinion, in a SCOTUS decision, in my opinion. I mean, every time you actually see that, it feels a little bit better, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's refreshing because they actually addressed the one of the more outrageous statements that Hawaii had said, which is that the Second Amendment basically has no bearing with the spirit of aloha that they're trying to do. And they said the Second Amendment means what it means in all 50 states. There's no exception to, locality preference on that. So you could say, I mean, if you could impose that sort of a rule, you could say that about anything, right? Like the spirit of aloha means that you don't get to have controversial opinions. So your right to protest and, redress of grievances is just done. We're not having that. Like, it's a ridiculous proposition, but the Supreme Court of Hawaii actually said that. It was last year or 2 years ago, whenever they made that decision. So they shot that down. It was a beautiful decision. And they actually opened the door in there when they talk about, it's a real short sentence. I don't remember where exactly it is in the opinion there, but they talk about how implements to the Second Amendment are going to be decided. And that is a foot in the door for the hardware case. The cool thing about the hardware case, we've all been waiting for an assault weapons ban case to make it to the Supreme Court. They have been denying it and denying it and denying it. And then I think it was Gorsuch 6 months ago or a year ago or something like that, said something to the effect of like in the next 2 to 3 terms, we're definitely going to take one of those cases up. And that implements line in there is a little foot in the door discussing about how it's not just the firearm itself that's protected, but it's the things that surround it that make it useful and capable. So that would be things like magazines or grips or stocks, all the stuff that states try to ban with assault weapons. And I think if you were to take that to its logical conclusion, you're going to have an awfully hard time maintaining the National Firearms Act as it is. I think they're going to leave the door open for, machine guns and destructive devices. But I think especially with the NFA tax going to zero, for silencers, short barrels, that sort of thing, there's no meaningful effect on public safety with those things being in widespread circulation and common use today. Very common use. Exactly. certainly in the context of the Caetano decision there in common use. I think those are going to be going the way of the dinosaur as well. So it looks like the Supreme Court is getting an assault weapons ban case teed up. There is a circuit split on it now, and there's a circuit split on silencers as well. So we should be not just enjoying this decision today, but keep your eyes open and look forward to what's coming next.
And it's good to know that the spirit of aloha violates the Second Amendment. So yeah, at least we got that one figured out today. So in that spirit, let's move on to something else real quick before we get to our comments. There was a test done. I think they did it in May, about a month ago. The guys with Dirty Civilian, all their videos are great and very informative. But they did one that was particularly interesting to me, where they kind of combined an IAR and a DMR style test, which is really cool. They shot out to a mile. I think they did tests at like 100 yards and like 400 yards, 700 and something after that. And then went out to a mile with a 6 arc round on a 14.5-inch barrel. So that's, I guess, the combo test, right? With an IAR and then a DMR. But the part I want to get to and I want to show, not to be selfish here, is they decided to test some armor, and they tested our armor, conveniently enough, to see how it would react, which is good, because a lot of times, Elliot, NIJ testing and then pretty much all the gun tuber testing you see is all at point blank range, essentially, for rifles. And so it is good to see how armor reacts at some other types of realistic distances as well. And let me pull this up really quick.
Yeah, and also with unique rounds that are sort of up and coming. I think 6mm in particular would be an issue. But I remember a couple of years ago we tried to get 277 Fury to be tested, and the lab said they just didn't have the barrels for that. So it just wasn't even something we could get a lab to do. We had to rely on YouTubers to do it for us. Right. So this is not something we can always replicate in a lab. We just need someone that has those type of guns, and we don't have a 6 arc. So there you go.
Exactly. And so they did this test, and let me pull it up here, where they shot, I think they said they shot the plates at a distance of something like 100, 200, and 400 rounds. And to see how they would react, let me pull that up properly here where they show the results. It looks like it's right about here somewhere. I think I went a little too far here. So you can see the whole thing. Started right. Hey, I think I pulled it up.
And it's actually kind of cool to see what 6 arc is doing. There is certainly more damage than 5.56, but Drew made a really good point off camera. When we shot these 2 targets, one at 200 and then one at 400, the average really, Tim, would you say the average rifle engagement distance with small arms is roughly 300 yards, or is that fairly close? Yeah, about 300 yards. Okay, cool. So at 100 yards, we are seeing some backface deformation. It carried a lot of energy. Now it's kind of hard to see, but you can feel the amount of damage it created to that ceramic on the inside. And then internally, there's a pretty decent cavity on the inside. So all that bullet penetrated through and then just carried a whole ton of that jacket and the internal lead and whatever else is in there, and just spread it all out and shredded the inside of that plate. I probably, if I was wearing that plate, would not want to get shot with 6 arc in that same spot again. The armor might hold up, but you're going to see a lot more damage for backface deformation. Now, good shooting Mitch at 200 yards and change. We obviously start to see, as that projectile is slowing down, it's just not carrying nearly as much damage. There's some backface deformation, just a little bit. Chad, I don't know if you can see that at all. There's some, but it is not creating as much of a cavity on the inside of that plate. Now at 400 yards, good shooting Chadwick. This actually is starting to become impressive because I'm discovering this as you guys are watching this. The backface deformation is close to the same at 200 yards. Now, it's worth noting, 5.56 at 1,000 yards, 77 grain, carries about 220 on the high end, 220 foot-pounds of energy at 1,000 yards. Now, 6 arc at 1,000 yards, 108 Hornady, this ammo that we're shooting, is carrying 550.
All right, I think that's a good spot to stop.
So it's more than double. That's an
But I mean, really, at 100 yards, 200 yards, and 400 yards, still, even though that round is what, 106 grain, 108 grain,
Yeah.
somewhere around there, like at those distances, not doing a whole lot, which is good to see.
Yeah. It's a good round for what the tactical purpose of it is. And I know some other people have made the comment about, what about 6mm max? Neither here nor there in this conversation at the moment. With 6 arc, though, I think it does bring up the point that as soon as people start making, penetrator, AP rounds, that sort of thing, you are once again looking at just needing level 4 plates for this. I don't think there's any telling what a 3+ plate would do with something like this in a penetrator format, because it is much more substantial than M55A1, probably less than M80A1, but as we know, M80A1 punches through a lot of 3+ plates. So once again, you're back to doing level 4. They did mention, though, a little bit later in that segment, I think they said something about their estimation was that a armor piercing 6-arc would probably penetrate a level 4 plate. I don't think that's going to happen. Level 4 plates are 162 grain 30 cal round at 2880 feet per second is basically a 300 Win Mag. And we're testing that at point blank range. And it's an armor piercing 300 Win Mag at point blank range. That's basically what the level 4 test is. We call it 30-06 because that's what the actual bullet is. But in terms of the loading and the velocity, you're fundamentally looking at a 300 Win Mag. The 6-arc is not comparing
Exactly.
It's not comparing an energy on target either at close distance or further out. And actually, the further out you go, the more extreme the distance or the foot-pounds of energy gets, because I think you're getting up to like 4 times as much energy out at like 1,000 yards, like 2 times as much up front. So a 6-arc AP round, unless they come up with some sort of new design that's substantially different or substantially harder or something, or substantially faster, it's not going to go through a level 4 plate. I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah. Now, like I said, great results for the plates. Not surprising whatsoever. That was our 1165 plate that they shot there at those distances. And it's a great video. It's a great experiment they did, especially when they started auto firing there at distance. I mean, these guys were hitting shots at a mile out. Just remarkable stuff. I'm going to link the video down below so you guys can go check it out if you haven't already. It's a great video. And as everyone knows, the guys at Dirty Civilian do a great job with all their videos. So definitely check those guys out. They're good people for sure. The next thing, I think we should get to the actual comments, since this is called the comments section. So let's do that. We have a question here that came in, and the question is, why do people buy expensive firearms but cheap out on protecting their body? I often have the same question, Elliot. Why do you think that is?
I think it's accessibility, number one. And Grayson and I talked about this a little bit last week. In terms of your retail presence, there's not a lot of hands-on experience with body armor, so it's not really something that people know a lot about. I think a lot of people are uncomfortable diving into that world because unless you sit around watching a bunch of, these videos, you're really not going to find very much great information in sort of one location on the internet that just tells you everything you need to know. I mean, we've all seen the knowledge base articles on some of our competitors' websites that say sort of crazy things. I remember one of them said that there were level 4 polyethylene plates and level 4 steel plates. Neither of those things even exist. I remember seeing another one from a different one where it was like, oh, ceramic plates are done in one shot. If you ever watched a Buffman video, everybody knows that's not true. So there's so much misinformation in the body armor industry. So I think from a consumer perspective, and I would feel this way about a lot of things, like if I had to order a car on the internet and I wasn't allowed to test drive it, it's hard to get a good feel for what you're getting your hands on. So I definitely get that part of it. The other part of it is there's really not people pushing that out there. And it's easier and sexier to walk into a store and get your hands on like a pistol and go, I've done the thing. I bought a gun and I'm done. I don't need to worry about anything else. But if you go on to take sort of carry classes, or especially where they teach you about the law of use of force, you're going to find out that it's not precisely true, but basically in a lot of self-defense situations, you're going to be faced with somebody pulling a gun on you first. So armor actually makes as much, if not more sense than buying a gun in that sort of a circumstance, because basically under the law, you almost have to let someone get the draw on you. Obviously that's not 100% true. There's disparity of force and making threats and all those sort of things, gray areas there that are circumstantial, but by and large, when you're in a defensive position using legitimate defensive force, what you're talking about is basically somebody coming at you in some way. And armor is designed to stop them if they get the best of that situation.
And I think a lot of the problem is pride with a lot of guys. We think, hey, we've got a firearm. We take classes. We do this. We do that. I watch all the video. I know everything, so I will be able to outmaneuver and outdo anybody, right? And so I think sometimes the pride gets in the way of it too. And so people go, I don't need armor. Not a big deal. And you may not think it is. The other problem is, I know we have the problem in marketing. It's not sexy like a gun, right? I mean, it just isn't. And it goes in a carrier, right? So you don't see it. So I think it's not thought of as often because it's not seen. And when it's not seen, out of sight, out of mind. So I think that's the other half of it. And I think, like you mentioned earlier, the knowledge goes a long way, and the understanding that you need to have in these situations make the difference. But I think that probably answers the question of why people are so willing to buy expensive firearms, but then maybe don't spend as much on body armor. Fortunately, with us though, you can get very expensive body armor for a very low price. So
actually,
that's what we do.
I would point to that too. I think price is a big part of it as well. Body armor doesn't do anything, right? You can't use it. It's just a thing that you wear, and hopefully you're wearing it if you need it. A gun you can take to the range, you can hang out with your friends, and you can shoot and have fun. A plate carrier, you can train with it maybe. There's not it's not a thing you do something with, right? It's like an inanimate object, sort of.
It's a life insurance policy. Essentially what it is.
It's a catastrophic life insurance policy. In terms of, an active threat, it's a little bit better than having a stack of paperwork, but it's not as, I would say, interactive. So it's not something I think that people think of, especially men, because we're, I think, action-oriented people. And so we go, I need to act to solve a problem. And maybe it doesn't occur to you to go, what if somebody's acting on me, right? Like, I'm taking action, I'm taking care of the situation. It might not occur to you that, what if things don't go 100% my way, right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think we worked our way around to the proper answer there at the end after working our way through it. So I think that answers that question. On to the next one. Can a bullet bounce off body armor and hit someone else? I think those are kind of two separate questions. One, can a bullet bounce off body armor? And then, therefore, can it hit someone else? And we did have a video to show on this because you brought this up to me previously. That it was Brandon Herrera who was shooting one of our plates. I'd totally forgotten about this, but one of his rounds that he shot bounced off the armor plate.
That's soon to be Congressman Herrera to you.
You're correct. You're correct.
The Honorable Brandon Herrera.
The Honorable Brandon Herrera for sure. Let me pull this thing up real quick and let's watch what he does here in this video. And what's he shooting here again? Do you remember this, Elliot?
I think it was a 45-70, and I think explaining why this happened that's going to come into play.
Yeah, let's watch this, then we can go into the explanation here.
570, because sometimes the Pinkertons are wearing armor. Firing. Hear that? Yeah, that stopped it, no problem. Wow. Holy shit. That just straight up bounced off the plate.
Oh, we heard it.
Oh, I heard it too. All right, this isn't even a bit. I have never seen a plate stop a bullet that well. Holy fuck. Level 4 don't play around.
Okay. I love his videos too. We're watching all the hits today. But there you go. I mean, he showed the round right there. bounce right off. But why don't you explain why that happened to a ceramic plate? Because this does not normally happen with ceramic body armor.
Yeah, so this is, we should mention, exceedingly rare. This happens quite a lot with steel plates, as everyone knows. That's one of the reasons you don't use steel as body armor. Ceramics and polyethylene plates are designed to absorb the round. In this case, it bounced. And I would take the simple example of, unfortunately, I don't have a bullet right here, but if I throw a bullet right at a plate, it's going to bounce off. I do not.
Velocity's a little slow.
Yeah, smash it, right? With a 45-70, and I think he was shooting like cowboy action loads there or something, which, and I think in a lot of cases are notorious for being underloaded, just for the simple cost, safety reasons, those sorts of things. That bullet was going slow enough that it didn't have the energy to actually break the ceramic. And that can certainly happen. It's unlikely, but I think that's sort of a rather unique situation with sort of low velocity rounds that are also big and fat. So it's got all that surface area as it's impacting. So instead of being, a small point, it's more of a fist and it's just kind of bouncing.
Yeah. I mean, that thing bouncing kind of almost dribbled off to the side. I just looked it up, Elliot. A cowboy load, like he said, typical velocity out of a lever action is 1,000 to 1,200 feet per second. So I guess that explains maybe why the bounce occurred. But again, all of his videos are great, and hopefully some of his policies that he enacts will be great too, as I assume they will be once he gets elected to Congress, right? So
soon.
Exactly. So anyway, next question. What should someone know before buying their first set of body armor plates? This is a very, I don't want to say vague question, but it's a very open-ended question, I guess. So what would you say is maybe the most important things that someone should know before buying their first set of plates, which I'm guessing maybe this is more for a noob, since it's more a noob type of question, right? So you're starting out very basic here.
Determine what threats you're going to try and defend against, right? In your environment, that's number one. The sizing, make sure you're covering your vitals, but you're not, obstructing your movement and weighing yourself down unnecessarily. And then how much money you have to spend on this thing, right? Not everybody has $2,000 for a set of plates. Maybe they got 1,000, maybe they got 500. And there's a lot of different options depending on your price point out there for every level of protection.
Exactly. And that kind of blends into our next question, which is the reason I paired these questions together. The next question we got was, how do you choose the right armor level for your personal needs? And you mentioned those three things, but the first place I always start with people is one, ballistics. What do you want your plate to be able to defeat? And the reason I ask that is because it leads into the next part of it. A lot of that depends either what your job is, if you're, in the military, or you're in law enforcement, or some other first responder, what your environment is there, or where you live. Do you live in an urban environment? Do you live in a rural environment? Those things impact the type of rounds that you'll come up against. So I think maybe that's the other part of that decision tree that you need to make.
Yeah, definitely. If you're law enforcement, for example, and this is something that I bring up a lot in regards to the SRT sells like crazy to law enforcement. And a lot of people on Reddit just do not understand it because they're like, oh, it doesn't do green tip. You're like, right. But looking at the overall, firearm homicide rate, particularly with attacks on police officers, you're looking at an 80-20 split between handguns and rifles, right? So cops are not in the business of getting into gunfights. It happens, but they don't go out every day getting into gunfights. Yeah, right. They need to, write tickets, or jump over a fence, or do any number of things that don't involve, worrying about green tip rounds. It's just like the work of a police officer. So if you're talking about being burdened all day, every day, whatever your shifts are, 3 days on 10-hour shifts, or 4 days on 12-hour shifts, or 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, depending on what your agency does, you're talking about wearing level 4 plates, as light as they are and all that. It is an enormous burden compared to something like a soft armor vest, right? And the reason the SRT is so popular is it gives you that basic rifle protection without making huge sacrifices in terms of your comfort, your wearability, crushing your spine, and all that stuff. It's thin, so it's not a big deal getting in and out of vehicles, which is kind of a big deal, right, for cops. So it just depends on what you're doing. Military, obviously, you're going to be facing a lot of armor-piercing rounds, as we saw in Afghanistan, Dishkas and all sorts of crazy stuff. Shrapnel from those, you may make a decision based on that kind of fire that's known in your AO. Hey, I want to go level 4, or maybe like in the case of the guys working in Africa, if you're just worried about AK fire and it's 7.62 by 39, like 100% of it or something,
Yeah,
right?
right.
You're not as worried about level 4 type threats, so you can get away with lighter weight plates. A lot of that just depends on the threats that you perceive in whatever your area of operations is. So if it's your house, certainly you should probably be worried about green tip at the least. That's totally logical. Green tip's available in pretty much every gun store in the entire country. But again, if you're out on the water, maybe you want plates that are more buoyant. So no, they're not, a life vest or something. It's not going to help you float, but it won't drag you down quite as much. And that might help you if you get in a wetter type of situation near a boat or something. And then level 4 is obviously, again, the easy button. If you're the kind of person that's going, hey man, I'm not going to be jumping out on a boat. I'm defending my house, or I'm defending my community in case of like an active shooter. And so this is my secondary vest to go to in that type of situation. Level 4 is perfect for that, especially with how light and affordable, the 65s and 55s are now.
Precisely. So, you got to make your own threat assessment for obviously your job and where you live, and start there. So that's how you really start to figure out the right armor level for your personal needs, where you are the most, which is mostly home and at work. So figure the threat levels out there and go from there. And you can continue to ask us questions because, again, it's a very subjective thing and can be very, very different on a case-by-case basis. But the final question, Elliot, speaking of subjective, this one is very subjective and maybe get you, I don't want to say hot water, but get a little controversy going, get people's blood boiling a little bit. But if you had 60 seconds to leave your home, Elliot, what gear would you want ready to go to take with you?
I'm certainly a little subjective, and I obviously work at RMA, so I have a much broader selection of things available to me than probably most people would, but I do have a particular carrier with 65 Gen 2s, obviously, in them with pistol mags and first aid stuff. I have fuel cans in the back of my truck. I have all sorts of recovery stuff in there. So I don't need to grab a lot of stuff. Your results might vary because maybe you need to use your truck for like other things. But in terms of like me, I probably grab an extra can of fuel because your vehicle is going to do a lot of stuff for you, whether it's heating or cooling or providing electricity to charge electronics or, of course, getting you across town, getting you through rough terrain, whatever. Vehicle's a big deal. So I would be taking fuel, food, water. If you've seen it like Costco, I know a lot of people buy MREs, but if you're not an MRE person, and not everybody is, Costco has these big buckets of, half edible stuff at the very least. They're like, I don't know, like $50 or something. And they've got whatever, it's like 20,000 calories in a bucket, right? I mean, that's like a solid 10 days of food right there. Or 5 days if you got 2, right? Grab 2, 3, 4 buckets, right? Just have them in your garage. So as you're going to your car, boom, throw them in there. It's shelf-stable stuff. I guess maybe as long as you don't live in Arizona, it's probably okay no matter where you are. Food, fuel,
firearms.
Yeah.
Follow the F.
An AR and a Glock. And if I can, at least like a 308 or something that's got a little bit of punching power at a little bit of distance, maybe a 300 Win Mag if you got that. Something that's going to allow you to take down big game reliably and in as few rounds fired as you possibly can.
I said, like, the question was if you only had 60 seconds, could you do all this in 60 seconds?
Oh, certainly.
Is your go bag and everything else ready to go in 60 seconds with all this?
Yeah, so I've actually done this before. I had a house fire back in, I think it was 2011.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. So I've done this, and actually it happened again at my dorm. Our elevator caught fire. And for some reason, I had to go back in the building, not the RAs, to go get my roommate because he was like asleep in his room or something like that. Just
Okay.
don't go in there. Like, someone's got to, dude. But in any case, I remember in that situation, in college, you don't own a lot of stuff. So like I needed my uniforms because I was in the reserves at the time. So I grabbed that stuff and, my laptop or something. There wasn't a lot there. But in my home now, yeah, I mean, depending on the situation, obviously, if it's a wildfire, that's much different than some sort of hostile action. Like if there's a mob coming down the street at my house, in that case, I would be grabbing my my big not a tote, but ammo cans. That's what it is.
There we are.
Yeah,
We got
ammo cans. I actually have a case back here.
Oh man.
Yeah, which is just loaded with magazines. This is my sort of grab and go case.
I was not ready for this one. You're ready for bear.
Organized right now, but you can see, and I've got these color coded according to what's in them. So there's everything from 77 grains to green tip to incendiaries. There's all sorts of things in there depending on what I'm trying to get done. So I've sort of arranged a lot of this stuff so that if that situation happens, I at least have a selection of things to choose from depending on the scenario. But food, water, fuel, ammo, and then like a Glock, an AR-15 of some kind. I'd probably go for my 11.5, but I do keep a 16 accessible, just because that's such a great general purpose rifle.
There's got to be a meme with somebody getting out of their house with all this stuff, right? Can we put that over the top here?
I'm sure my neighbors think I'm a crazy person because I'm sure they see me like going out to my car as I'm going to like, do the video and photo shoots and stuff like out in the mountains. Yeah, I mean, I do have a bevy of the stuff that I'm sure normal people wouldn't because it's all work related for me. But certainly, you should be stockpiling ammo and you don't have to do, 1,000 rounds of it at a time. It sucks spending $500 on that. You can just go to your local store and every time you get paid, buy one, $10 or $20 box of ammo, whatever it is, 308 or 5.56 or 9mm or whatever. Spend 10 or $20 every single time you get paid, go buy one box of ammo. Or two, if you can afford that or more. There's ways to prep for this stuff without having an, enormous financial impact. And then you can set your things up, whether it's, just throwing a whole bunch of mags in one case, so you're ready to go. Having a plate carrier or a certain rifle or whatever it is that would be your sort of bug out setup, all accessible, all ready to go, without, straining yourself too much, within 60 seconds, certainly, food, fuel, water, and or some sort of water filtration. Like in my truck, I keep a couple different water filters in there. Life straw. I mean, that's something that I think if you live in a place like I do, which is fairly rural, you should just have that like in the back of your carrier in a backpack or something at all times. Yeah, there's a few things there. I would just say food, fuel, water, ammo, and then like an AR-15 of some kind, like a 9mm Glock, because you're going to find 9mm everywhere. I know the alternative argument there is that nobody shoots 40 and thus you'll find 40 because everyone will be trying to scrape 9mm. Dude, go to a gun store today and go look at how much 40 is on the shelf. There's at least one other person in your town that has 40. The odds are of you getting the like 200 rounds of 40 that are at the local store is so low, it's just not even worth doing. Go with 9. You can find that anywhere. The military uses it, police uses it, civilians overwhelmingly use it. Everybody uses 9. Go with 9. And Glock is also great because you're going to find a lot of aftermarket support, a lot of spare parts, a lot of magazines. There's a lot of Glock stuff sitting around the United States. Same thing with AR-15s and 5.56. And then obviously, again, we talked about if you can, a 308, a 300 Win mag, something like this that you can, maybe just shoot one round and take down some sort of a big game animal. But other than that, that's just kind of the basics you got covered there. If you have something else available to you that you think's useful, night vision or thermal or something, like go for it, man.
At least have a go bag, even if you can't afford or can't have a go truck like Elliot clearly has ready to go. That's awesome. I think we could have done a whole episode on that. Maybe we should do prepping next time and
Do a
go
whole
over
episode on what I've got in this room, I'm sure.
I know exactly. Maybe we'll just do a tour next time, and all that stuff will be ready to go in your truck at a moment's notice. But that was the last question I had here on today's episode of the comments section. If you have any questions or comments for us on anything Second Amendment related, it does not have to just be about body armor. We'll be happy to answer them. Go ahead and leave a comment or a question down below, or shoot us over an email to our customer service email, and we will be sure to answer your questions potentially on the next episode. But until then, we will talk to you later.
Thanks, guys.